Hello, everyone. This is Amber Zhao, Principal Data Engineer from Microsoft. Today, Ryan and me will introduce Microsoft Purview Data Governance session. Ryan, hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm a data engineer in the Fast Track for Azure team. Thank you for joining us today as we go through the fundamentals of Purview. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you, Ryan. Let's say hello to our moderator, Niraj Andrews. So Niraj Andrews also from Microsoft Fast Track for Azure organization. They will help us to moderate today's session. All right. So let's see the material for this session. So please scan the QR code. In this QR code, will help you to navigate the Microsoft Purview Data Governance Collection. That is the host on Microsoft Learn website. So all today's session, the content, the material will paste in the collection, Microsoft Purview Data Governance Collection. All right, so let's take a look at today's learning objectives. Today, we're going to understand what is Microsoft Purview Data Governance Solution and how to build the fundamental for the Microsoft Data Governance Solution. And for sure, we're going to do some demo for the current Microsoft Purview capability. And so last but not least, best practice learnings and recommendation for how to use Microsoft Purview Data Governance. All right, so our first topic will be overview for Microsoft Purview Data Governance. Microsoft Purview Data Governance, this is Microsoft Purview Data Governance target as a central place for multi-cloud, on-premise, and also SaaS solution to build a data governance platform. So in this data governance platform, so there's some key components. The first one will be data catalog. Using the data catalog, we can ingest multiple metadata. So currently it provides more than 40 connectors for cross Azure, AWS, RDS, GCP, and also on-premise, Oracle, and so SAP, so Teradata, all those on-premise connector that is also available in Purview. And so the data insights, this is has a very powerful built-in dashboard, allow the user to see the current the data catalog. And policy allow the user to create a policy, push down to the physical data source, manage user access. Last but not least, data map. Data map provide a key functionality, lineage, also classifications. So give the catalog metadata, the classification labels. And this could be based on the different persona, data producer and data consumer and data SME, data officers. So, all right, and this is the overview for the Microsoft Purview. So our next topic will be the permission management. Hand over to you, Ryan.
Great, thank you, Amber. So it all starts off after you've created a Purview account with setting up permissions. So by default, the creator of your Purview account is granted collection administrator control over your root collection. And Amber will talk a little bit about collections and what they mean and how you set them up later. But for now, to get to your Purview, in your Azure portal, navigate to your resource group, select your Purview account, which I've done over here. And the first page, the overview page, will start off with this information here at the bottom, which is what we're interested in today. Manage the users, opening up the portal, and then it's just a link to some documentation. Now, if by any chance you get to the screen and you don't have these enabled, we will talk about a little bit later about why those aren't enabled and how you can get access to those, right? Only people that have access to this Purview governance portal when you log into Azure will get this link, right? So once you click on that link, it takes you into the Purview governance portal. And here is where you set up your access control and your permission management. Now, in Purview, we kind of use access control and permission management a little bit synonymously with each other, but don't confuse that with this thing down here that you see called credentials. We will get to what these credentials are in a little bit in a demo a bit later. But for now, we're talking purely about access control and users. And to get to that, in Purview, it's all done over here on your data catalog when you look at your collections. Here's some collections that I've got set up. And at this collection level, you can actually go into a collection and you, hold on a second. You can go into your collection and you can see your role assignments. So here I'm in my Australasia kind of collection. And if I click on role assignments, I come up and I can see the role assignments for this collection. Now, as you can see, this is a tree structure. So it starts off at the root with Contoso, and then we've got children, and within that we've got children again, and within finance we've got some extra. Now, permissions start at your collection level, and then they trickle down through the sub-collections underneath that, right? So in order to have a look here at my root collection, I can go to role assignments, and I can see that on this collection, these are the different roles that I can assign to this collection, right? And if we have a look at them, we've got collection admins, and that's a person that can edit and create collections and add sub-collections, right? They can also then add data curators, data readers, etc., etc. So collection admins is kind of your super user account in Purview. Then you've got other ones like data source admins that can add and register new data sources, data curators that can perform, create and read actions on your data catalog, data readers that can actually only have access to read data catalog objects, but they can't register new ones or kick off scans or any of that kind of stuff. Data share contributors, there's a feature of Purview called a data share, which is currently in preview. This is where you manage users that have access to that. Amber mentioned there was insights. These are people that have access to those insights reports. Policy authors, again, this is where these are the people that can actually go and edit and create policies. And then another preview feature within Purview currently is workflows. And these are the people that can then go and set up workflows. So as you can see, by default, I'm given, because I'm the creator of this Purview account, I've been given every one of these roles. Now I can go and start removing some of these, but remember, so like, for instance, I can go and remove myself as a workflow admin. If I wanted to add a new workflow admin, I can come in here, and then let's say I'm going to add Amber as my workflow admin. I can actually add Amber, and I can say okay. And now on this Purview account, Amber will be able to create new workflows on that account. So that's a quick look at your roles. Now let's talk a little bit more about the hierarchy. So here you can see I'm on the root collection, and I gave it a nice friendly name, by the way, because this collection name will default to the same name that your account is. So here you can see my account name, and I just gave myself a nice friendly name called Contoso. Otherwise, it would have said RG Purview on it. But if we go back to this, where we are here, and we have a look at the role assignments, you can now see that if I go to accounting, for instance, and I look at its roles assignments, I can see this one here called inherited. So this says I have inherited collection admin permission on this collection because I'm an admin on finance, and I inherited that because I was a collection admin on Contoso, right? I can go and add extra people. So you can see here, I can go and add in an extra person, for instance. I can go add, let me say again, I want to make Amber collection admin on my collection. So I'm going to say okay. Now you can see if I come back to finance and I look at role assignments, I am the admin on finance. But if I look at accounting, Amber is now an admin on accounting. So that means Amber can go and set up things within accounting. She can go and assign users at the accounting level. She can go and create sub-collections, etc., underneath accounting. But for instance, in forecasting, she doesn't have permission to forecasting, and therefore she can't do anything within that forecasting collection. So this is how one of the ways, or the way that you structure user access control inside of Purview. And it's one of the reasons why we set up a collection structure like this. But Amber will talk a little bit more about collection structures in a bit. One thing I wanted to point out as well is there's this cool thing over here called restrict inherited permissions, right? So as you can see here, I've got permission on this because I'm inheriting this from the collections above, right? What happens if I actually I want to be able to have control of all of these things, but I don't want, revenue's got some very specific stuff in revenue, and the revenue department doesn't want me to have any access to any of that information. Well, I can go along and I can do things like restrict inherited permissions, okay? So what restrict inherited permissions is going to do is it's going to say there are no data source admins, curators, readers that have been inherited, right? So yes, I'm still there as a collection admin because you can't change that. But if, for instance, I now go to here, you can actually see that revenue is grayed out, right? And that's because I have no read access. And if you hover over it, it says you don't have read access to assets in this collection because there's nobody in the data reader role because I've restricted that inheritance. Whereas you can see I can actually read forecasting because I have permission to see forecasting by the fact that I am in the data readers group of forecasting, right? So I hope that explains the hierarchical structure of role assignments in Purview and how you can restrict inheritance if you wish. It's important to remember that only users that have been assigned in here in one of these roles, so users that have been put in here, either the user directly or a group, will be able to access this portal. So remember when I said over here, if you don't have permission, you'll see this, but it'll be grayed out. You then need to contact a collection admin and say, please, can I be given access to one of the roles inside of Purview, right? One other thing that might happen, which is good to know, and I will post a link to the command in the chat window, is sometimes, hold on a sec, I didn't get in the right window. Sometimes when you build your collection, this is an important point to note, and it's in the documentation that I just pasted in the window. It says, if you created an account using a service principal to be able to access the Microsoft governance portal, you need to assign permissions to a user. Remember, I said that the creator by default is given all access. Well, in this case, your service principal would have been given all access, but that doesn't help any user be able to add. So all users, when they come to this view in their portal, will find this grayed out and disabled. In that case, you need to be able to execute this Azure CLI command, which will then give permission to a user. Otherwise, without that CLI command, you need to go into the governance portal to give yourself permission, but you can't get into the governance portal. So that's what this command here is for. One other interesting command which is useful to know around permission management is this one. So back in the Azure portal, there's this root collection permission. Remember, I said the root collection permission is the permission in that starts there. So who has access to this? Currently, it's me. But if I want to change that, because I might be managing my Azure infrastructure in my organization, but I don't actually use the services, I can come in here and I can actually add Amber, for instance, over here. and I can look up a group, or I can add Amber from inside my Azure policy. So once this is done and I jump back across to Purview, she will now have root admin access to my, in theory. So if I come back here and I refresh, Amber now has root access because I added her from inside of the portal. So there are multiple ways to change that and set that, which is kind of handy. And I think that about covers it all for permission management within Purview. So back to you, Amber.
Thank you, Ryan. This is very helpful. Okay, so our next topic will be the collection design. So Ryan already showed the collection, the permission, that is when we design the permission. And so the permission we title is collection. So let's go to the collection design. So create a collection, pretty straightforward. So this is my current the Purview environment. And I have the collection. So let's go here, see the collection structure. So this is my current Purview collection. So collection has a hierarchy structure. So we can create multiple layer, up to 8-layer collection. And so Purview always create a root level collection. So this will be exactly the same with your Purview account. So mine will be FTA Purview. This is the root collection automatically created by Purview account. And so when you create your Purview account, so you will see that it's empty, only the root collection, FTA Purview. That will same with my Purview account. So before you register your data source, so the first thing we think about, we should design the collection. And so when we design the collection, let's see, I want to use a few examples to design the collection. So this is one of the best practice to design the collection. So I send in this chat window, and so you could grab this link, see how we're going to design the collection. So when we design the collection, it's really about your scenario. So how many data you want to manage. So how many users will access the current Purview data governance portal? As Ryan mentioned, so there's multiple users, the built-in role in Purview. So if you have the metadata, that is the SQL Server data. This data is specific for a project team. So when you build a Purview and scan your SQL Server metadata, so and also scan multiple data, so you don't want all the user can access all the metadata, even that's metadata. So think about the permission management Ryan just shared. So you may want a specific project team. So if you have a budget, so the SQL Server metadata, that is the support budget project, the budget team. And you also have another, the Azure SQL DB, that is for the sales team. So you want to register the data under different collection and grant the user the different permission, read the permission, or allow the user to set up the scan or modify under the different collection. So Ryan just shared, so in the root collection, so all the user has all the permission to access based on the inherited permission, can access the child level, the collection. So, but we don't want to over-design the collection, especially for the small user to access the Purview data governance portal. Even we can design up to 8-layer Purview collection. Let's give you example based on the business unit to design the collection. So another example, so we see some user, they want to build a Purview, they want to build a data governance as a central place. So manage the multinational data source. In this case, so besides the business unit, you may want to cover the different region. So some data from like, okay, I have the US data. I also have the Canada data. So each project, each team manage their physical data source in the local region. But when we build a data governance platform, and so in the Purview, we can scan all the metadata. And when the user access, we still want the user access their specific physical data, metadata. So that's why we add one more layer that is based on the region, based on the country. So these are two examples. The last one, so this is based on the data state. So a good example, the machine learning project. In the machine learning project, so the raw data is not about which project, it's all about the data state. If that is the raw data, so we can create a collection that is the raw zone. All the sales data, the product data from the different regions. So we put all the raw data together, right, as a child collection. And so then we can use some multiple tools, machine learning tools, the Python code to transfer the data as a refined zone. Finally, those data could feed to machine learning module. So this is not based on any business unit or based on the region, but this is based on the data state to manage the collection, child collection. Okay, so we go to 3 examples to design the collection, and let's see how to create a collection. Create a collection pretty straightforward. So I have the current collection that's already shown in my current the Purview, and so I want to create a child collection. So this collection will be under relevant team. I call it the Purview data collection. So when I design the when I create a collection, so the collection admin, I put Ryan as a collection admin. All right, so I have one more collection. So I have one more collection. This collection, so with the under the root collection. So when I create this collection, pretty straightforward. So when we follow the design the child collection and the create collection, so there's another pretty useful function. So even we register data source and manage access, so under the child collection, some user maybe want to move around those access between those collection. How we could move the access? So let's find, this is a new one. Let's find the some access under my current collection. Okay, I have the 55 access under my relevant team collection. For some reason, my current access, I want to move to the new collection. I just create a Purview data collection. So I can just quickly to choose the table, the Oracle table, and also there is the COVID CSV file. I want to move the 2 access to another collection. From the move access, so we can choose which collection. This is a current collection since I just create a new collection. So let's go to find a new collection. And this is a new collection I just created. All right, so this is still the current collection. Let's go to the new collection I just created. All right, so currently I have 2 new access that's moved from the relevant team, the collection, to the product Purview, to the Purview data child collection. So why I want to move this? So as Ryan mentioned, so one of the key functionality that is a role assignment. So for the Purview data child collection, if any user they have access to Purview data, they can access the current new 2 access. All right. So this is how we design the collection and also create a collection, move assets around the collections. So next topic will be the data source and also the scan. Ryan, hand over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Amber. So Amber showed you the walkthrough of your data map. Now to register a data source, the first thing we want to do is understand the data sources that are available in Purview. So if you take a look at the URL that I'm sharing in the chat window, these are all the current supported types, data sources and file types. Keep an eye on this page, bookmark it, and keep an eye on this because it changes fairly regularly. You can see the last time there was a change was in the 17th of November. The Purview team is constantly working on adding new sources and new file types, so keep having a look at this for all the different kinds of types that we support. Here are the regions that the Purview data map scanner runs in. So it's good to understand where the scanner runs. And if your data source is in a region outside of one of these regions, and the scanner will then run in the region of your Purview instance. So for instance, if I have Australia East and Southeast, and then I was using a different region that wasn't in this list, but my Purview account was in Australia East, that's where the scanner will run. So if my data was sitting in, where's a region that doesn't, so Central Australia, Central region, Purview is, the scanner is not in that region, but my account was in Australia East, then the scanner will run in Australia East. So that's important to kind of keep in mind. So now that we can see this, one other thing that's very good to know, and I'm going to walk through an example with everybody today, but each of these data stores or data sources have a link to some better or more comprehensive documentation for that particular source. So for blob storage, for instance, you can click on that link, and this will walk you through all the supported capabilities of blob storage. It'll call out any prerequisites, it'll call out any limitations, and it'll most likely give you some examples about scanning, best way to authenticate for the scan, etc., etc. So I would recommend that you start with this page, find the data source that you're interested in, like Azure Database for MySQL, click on that, and then walk through that documentation there that'll give you in-depth details about the particular data source that you're interested in. But let's go ahead and create a new data source. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. One, there's the register button up here, or you can find where it is inside your data map and click on the register button over here, right? And that's just got to do with, when I do this one, it'll scope that data source for me to this collection. If I click on this one over here, it'll ask me where I want to scope it because it's on the global level. So I'm just going to go to Australasia, and let's do something like blob storage. So just select blob storage, and you can just give it a name. Right, and I can now go and filter my Azure subscriptions. I can find my storage accounts. Now remember, this is a blob storage. So if you have a storage account that's marked as hierarchical data store, in other words, it's a Azure Data Lake store, then the connector that you want to use is the Azure Data Lake connector, not the Azure Blob Storage connector, right? So for now, I'm just wanting to do a blob storage account. So here is a demo account I have. And here is that selector collection. Because I started it in Australasia, it'll automatically put it in Australasia. But if I make a mistake and I say I want to put it in Asia, I can go and put it in Asia by doing it that way, right? And I'm going to say register. And it should take a couple of seconds to register. All right, so that's the data source registered, as easy as that, right? But registering a data source actually doesn't do very much other than tell Purview that there is something there. we actually need to go, if we want to use that and go discover the assets that are in there, we actually need to go and do things like scan a blob, or set up a scan, for instance. Before I do that, we'll do that in a sec. But before I do that, let me go and show you about credentials, because now we're going to need credentials. So credentials are how Purview connects to services to go and discover the data that you have. So how does Purview go and reach your storage account? How does it reach your Amazon S3 bucket? How does it reach your on-premises SQL server? All those kinds of things, those are credentials that you need to set up and tell Purview what credentials it should use to go and scan those sources. And the way credentials are done in Azure is all through Key Vault, right? So one of the prerequisites to this is you need to have a Key Vault, and your credentials need to be, or your Purview account needs to be linked to a Key Vault connection. So if I come in here, you can see I don't have a Key Vault linked yet, so I can go new, and I can say RG Key Vault, and would help if I could spell properly. Again, I can go and find a Key Vault that I already have, and there it is there, right? So I already have a Key Vault. All I'm doing is I'm linking my Purview account to my Key Vault, right? And this here is very important, right? Your Purview managed identity must have access to your Key Vault, right? So what Purview will do when a scan runs is at runtime, the managed identity that Purview is running as will try to connect to your Key Vault to extract a secret. Now, if Purview managed identity doesn't have access to your Key Vault to read, I think it's get and list secrets, then your scans are going to fail, right? So here is a very good article that'll tell you how to do that. So there's the article there, and it'll walk you through step by step on how to grant permission. But I will show you a shortened version. If you go to Key Vault, here's my Key Vault. If I go to access policies, in this access policy here, you'll see there's my application called Purview in this case, right? And I've given it permission to get and list secrets. Once that's done, then we're good to go, right? And that's the managed identity that my application runs as. It's not a user, it's the identity that Purview runs as. So that's what you need to do there to get that to work. So here, I'm going to create this, and it reminds you, please make sure that that's happened. Otherwise, you will be in for a sad time later in the day. So go along. I've now linked my Purview to my Key Vault, and that's all I really need to do for now. And if I refresh this, we're all good. So we've done that. What we still don't have is we still don't have a credential. And like it says here, credentials are basically connection strings, right? So I'm going to go add a new one, and I'm going to say, call it a credential for Purview demo store, which is my blob storage, right? And here it gives you the option to pick authentication methods. And there's a whole bunch of authentication methods that you can use. We recommend using managed identity or service principal, right? So we recommend using those as far as you can. But obviously some things like SQL potentially won't work with Windows authentication. So you may have to go and set SQL authentication on that. Or your service principal is in a different domain to where your SQL server is, and that won't work, or whatever the case may be, right? So in this case, I'm going to go use an account key. Just because it's there. So pick from here your Key Vault connection. If you get to this screen and there's no Key Vault in here, then you need to go back and link your Key Vault to your Purview account. But I've done that, so now it wants to know the Key Vault. And if I go to secrets, I don't have a secret, so let me just go and create a secret quickly. Purview demo store secret. Okay, and I'm gonna go and copy my key. So this is my storage account's access key. So I'm gonna go along here, take that, paste it into there, and you can future date them, you can set them to expire, you can do all sorts of cool things. I have a script typically that will go and rotate these keys. There you see that key was rotated 0 days ago. So I generally have a script that will rotate these keys, and then it'll push the new secret into a version of the secret inside of Key Vault. But for now, I'm just going to go and create that. There's my secret, okay, and I've called my secret that. I'm going to copy and paste it in case I didn't type it properly. So Purview wants to know what's the secret's name, and you can tell it to use a particular version. I'm going to leave it and I'm going to use the default one. So I'm going to create that. So there's my credential created. So now I can come back and I can do, so let's go to our source. There it is there. Okay. And I'm going to set up, I can come in here. Here's my data source. And you can see it's got no scans, there's no assets, there's no classified assets. It gives you some information about when this source was created, the collection path it's in, the hierarchy it's in. We'll see a little bit more about this once I go and create a scan. So for now, I'm going to go and create a scan. I'm going to call this daily Purview demo scan. All right. And integration runtimes is basically where the compute for your scan runs. So much like other Azure services like Synapse Pipelines or Azure Data Factory that need to connect to systems to go and do stuff with them, we use integration runtimes. And there are two kinds of integration runtimes. One is this Azure Auto Resolve integration runtime, and that's the one that will go and run the scan in a region where your data is. If Purview is not available in that region, it'll run the scan in the region your Purview account is in. If you want to set up integration runtimes yourself, like for instance, I've got a managed virtual network, and there's some data sources inside that managed virtual network, then I go and set up my own resolver inside of that managed network. I can also go and set up a self-hosted runtime, all of that kind of stuff, the same way we typically do for something like Azure Data Factory. I'm not going to go through too much on this one for now, but have a look at the link that I'm sharing again, and that will show you some more details about it if you need to. So for now, I'm just going to run along. And here, the important thing is I'm going to go pick my credential, right? You can get it to use the managed identity. So here you see Microsoft Purview MSI. We'd recommend that you actually do these and don't create credentials, right? But this one here, if you choose to do this, it's very, very, very important that this Microsoft Purview MSI has access to your storage account, right? If you make the scan run as this, and this doesn't have access to your storage account, the scan will fail. So for now, I'm going to pick this one. And the most important button on the screen is test connection. So test that connection, and this will now test that my connection failed and failed access with the given credentials, right? So for some reason, my connection is not working, which is great. Thanks to the demo gods for that one. There's a nice, I actually did that on purpose because I wanted to show you the document about troubleshooting your connections in Purview, right? I often come to this because unfortunately test connection often fails for me because I've done something wrong. So permission the credential on the data source, verify your role-based security, scanning, go through these kinds of things if you have problems. And 9 times out of 10, you should figure out why that failed. So I've done something wrong, and for the life of me, I can't think what it is at this point. Key Vault secrets, it's enabled. It's a secret. It's in the Key Vault. Okay, I can't figure out what I've done wrong at this point. So we will skip this, and I will move on to the next stage. sorry about that, scan blob storage. All right, so I wanted to actually show you what happens when a scan runs. So unfortunately, I'm going to need to figure this out, but we're running a little bit short on time for this section. So I'm going to hand back to Amber to talk about data lineage while I figure out the access permissions in the background. So over to you, Amber.
Thank you, Ryan. So there is a user asked a question about the delete access. So let's quickly cover that part, or delete a register data source. So from here, I register. So in my current, this is the Purview data child collection. I have the to access. I move from the Raman collection to here. And so I don't have any register source, but let me go here, delete one register source from the Raman team. So we can delete this source. So when we go here, we can delete this one. So this is Oracle one. I don't want to delete my Oracle one. Let me delete another one. Okay. So the blob. Let me delete the blob one. When I register Azure SQL DB, when I register Azure SQL DB, register under child collection, so I can easily to delete the source. So delete this one, and when I delete a register source, it won't impact my current access that's already scanned in the Purview. So how can I delete access? So let's go here, find access under the collection. I have two access. So delete access pretty straightforward. Just go to the access. So there is a button delete. We can just go here to delete the access. So user maybe ask, when I delete a register source, why it didn't delete all the scanned access? One of the reasons is you may wanna move your register source in a different collection. In that case, it won't impact your current scan access in your Purview account. So this is how we delete a single access. So, but if you have the million level access, you may don't want to go to the UI portal, click the one by one to delete each access. So we have another, there's a Purview also has a REST API that is available, allowed to delete, do a batch delete. And also, so we have a solution accelerator. This solution accelerator using the Python script, so to delete access. So from here, we can do based on collection delete. So this is a code example. From here, we can just give like the collection ID from here, and which collection you want to delete all the access. So we do not need to go to the each access delete one by one, just based on the collection, the child collection to delete all the access under that child collection. This is how about do the batch delete access in the collection. All right, so this is to answer, I hope this could answer the question how to delete a register data source and also access using the UI to delete, also using the Python script to do the batch delete. Let me send this Python script in the chat window so user could reference this simple code. All right, so let's meet back to the our next topic, the Purview Lineage. All right, so Purview has when we go to the lineage, so Purview has a three type of lineage. So the first one will be the data processing system. For the data processing system, this is a runtime lineage, dynamic lineage. And so let's go to see which the processing system support the runtime lineage. So ADF, Azure Data Factory. If you have any pipeline that is hosted in Azure Data Factory, or the Synapse workspace, Synapse pipeline, so we can connect your Purview account with your ADF account and also Synapse workspace. So when your pipeline be triggered, the Purview will automatically capture the lineage, the data movement from the source to the sink. Currently, there's a 3 type of the activity that's being supported. ADF copy activity and data flow activity, and also SSIS package activity. And for the Synapse, there's 2 types of the activity, copy, data flow activity. So Purview can capture those activity automatically, get the lineage. And so besides the ADF and the Purview, so there's another one, Azure SQL Database. So for the Azure SQL Database, this is for the stop procedure. You may have the stop procedure that copy, transfer data from your table to the destination table. So the Purview also will capture stop procedure data movement using the lineage extraction. And so last one is a data share. So this is for the legacy Azure data share service. If you use the data share, so the Purview also can capture the data share snapshot. All right. So this is a data processing system. So let's look back for the second one. The second is for the data storage system. So besides the processing runtime lineage, so Purview also can capture the relationship between table, view, stop procedure. So this is a static lineage in the storage system. Let's look at here. So this is a data storage system that's listed in the Purview, the data source. So the Oracle, MySQL, so all those data source. So if the Oracle has a table and also has a view, so the view created by table, we also can get the lineage to show the relationship between the Oracle table and the view. Similar with SAP, CC, SAP HANA. This is a list available data storage lineage system. So last one is for the reporting system. So Power BI, we can use the Purview to register Power BI, scan the Power BI data set, reports, dashboard. And so we know the Power BI has the lineage, so bring the where's the data set, where the data set will be used in the reports. So it also will bring lineage to show the data set, data flow, reports, dashboard in the Purview. So this is the 3 types of lineage. So in the Purview, let's give example, see the what it looks like in the Purview account. So this is one of my end-to-end Purview lineage. So let me zoom from here. I have my on-premise data, so I upload the data to the Azure Blob storage. So my data is Iris CSV data. So we can see this is Azure Blob path, so which means the data locate Azure Blob storage. So I have my ADF UAT account. My ADF UAT account use a copy activity, copy my Iris data from the CSV. And let me switch to another one. So it's a little bit different with the original one. Let's not show all the data. All right, this is much more better. So this is my on-premise data. So I upload to this one. So I upload the data to my the blob storage. So as a CSV format. So when I upload to blob storage as a CSV format, so I wanna use my ADF UAT account to copy the data to convert the format as the Parquet format. So we can see we have the copy activity, copy the data, change the format. And so I also have the ADF production account. My production account will pull the data, will pull the CSV data to transfer to Azure SQL table. So in the Azure SQL table, my Power BI dataset will use Azure SQL table as a data source. All right, so this is the end-to-end lineage to show how we the Purview can capture the data lineage from blob storage to the ADF account with data format transfer, and also transfer the data to Azure SQL DB, eventually build a report in Power BI. So this is a end-to-end lineage. So besides this lineage, so Purview also can support the column lineage. So we can see there is a Iris data, ISV data. So let's go to this data. I may want to see which column the data being copied, transferred to Azure SQL table. So from here, we can see which column. So which column from the blob to copy to the Azure SQL table. So this is for asset level lineage. Also, it could down to the column level lineage. So this is the lineage. So how we build the lineage, how we connect the lineage, connect with ADF account. This is pretty straightforward. All right, so here, this is the lineage connection, as we said. So the Purview supports the ADF account, data share, and also the Synapse. So for ADF data share, we can go here, go to the Purview to connect, set up the connection. So this is the connection when we click new and choose the subscription and choose which ADF account you want to connect. So just go here, click OK. So this will help you build a connection between the ADF account and the Purview account. This is pretty straightforward to build a connection between the Purview and ADF account. All right. So this is the lineage part. Our next topic will be classification. Back to you, Ryan, for the classification topic. Right, you mute yourself.
Thank you. So out of the box, Purview can, when it's scanning your data, it can automatically classify your data at an asset and at a column level. So let's have a look at what I'm talking about in terms of classification. So a good starting point for the classifications is this link that I'm posting in the chat window. So if we open that up, you will be able to see it talks about applying classifications on assets in Purview, right? So this is a really, really good documentation over here about how to set up classifications. One of the things that we want to be able to do, if we have a look here, system classifications. So out of the box, Purview can apply a whole bunch of classifications, and there's a bunch of them that comes out of the box, and it will go along and it will scan the classifications. And if you look here, once you get to running the results of your scan, so once the scan has happened, it'll suck in your assets. And here we're looking at an Azure SQL table asset that it's had a look at. And if you have a look down here, these things here under classifications, email address, person's name, password, phone number, these are some system classifications that as it was scanning that SQL table, it went along and said, hey, this column is an email address, this column is a person's name, this column is probably a password, this column is a US phone number. And there's a whole bunch of those different kinds of classifications that you can actually have a look at. You can also go ahead and create a custom classification. But before we talk about custom classifications, I want to share another good piece of documentation with everybody that's important to understand. So if we have a look at this document here talks about the sampling for data classification. Now this becomes really important because in order to classify, Purview needs to go and have a look at some of the data, right? And it needs to then make a decision about whether it's going to apply a classification or not. And this is how it does it. So very important document. If you're seeing classifications that are being applied and you're like, how did that happen? Or you're expecting a classification to be applied and it didn't get applied, maybe this will help, right? So important for structured file types, it samples the top 128 rows in each column or the first 1 megabyte. For tabular data sources like SQL, it'll scan the top 100 rows. Remember, it's the top 128 rows, right? So it's the same effect as going to your SQL table and saying, select top 128 from, or select top 128 star from table name, right? This matters because depending on what, say, the clustered index of that table, you may get some strange results, right? And this, I'll talk a little bit more in a second about why this becomes important. For Azure Cosmos DB, it's the same thing. It'll look for the first 128 documents or the first 1 megabyte. It's important because when you start doing this, and then when you start working with resource sets and file samplings, there's some rules here as well. Now, all right, so this here is the system classifications in Purview, right? And if you want to know about all the different system classifications that come out of the box, here they are. Here are all of them, and there are a lot of them. So there's Australia's driver's license number. There is like there's a heap of them. I'm not going to walk through all of these. There's Portugal's passport number, Slovakia's driver's like Taiwan passport. There's a whole bunch of them here, right? These are the ones we ship out of the box, like I said, and we will try and classify data based on these. You can see that it's using regex filters or regex patterns and Bloom filter. And if you want to learn more about those things and the machine learning model, you can click on those links and we'll talk a little bit more about them. You can see that they come from Microsoft because when you look at the classification's name is all prefixed by Microsoft, right? So you can tell the difference between your custom ones and the ones that we ship out of the box. So let's take a quick look at how I would then create a custom classification. So if we go to classifications again in Purview portal, here they are all there, and you can actually go and have a look into a little bit more detail about a classification. And you can look at something like this and it'll tell you if it's been found, how many times it was found, etc. Right? You can go and create a custom classification. So let's go create a custom classification. So we can come along and we can create our custom classification, and I'm going to create one and I'm going to call it Contoso, so I can separate it from the Microsoft one. I'm going to put on something like that so that I know it's for a particular department, and I'm going to create something called I wanted to scan for an employee number, right? So I say okay, and that's my new classification that's been applied, right? Or it's been created. So there's now a thing in Purview called that, but that's not kind of do very much. I need to actually go tell it under what conditions it should apply that classification, and that's called the classification rule. So if I come in here and I say apply Contoso HR employee ID rule. All right, I link it to HR, the policy that I've created, and now I get a choice to say, is this a regular expression or is it a dictionary? And a dictionary, I literally upload a set of known values, and if it matches one of those values, it'll apply the classification. So a good one here would be the list of US states or the list of Australia states or days of the week, months of the year, those kinds of things would be great for dictionary. We're going to go along and create a regular expression because I'm not going to go and upload all my employee ID rules in a dictionary. So for this one, I'm going to create a regular expression, and I'm going to go next. And I know some people, you can probably go into, some people can. Mere mortals like myself can never get regular expressions done properly. So what I can do is I can go along and I can upload a file. So this one is some sample data. So I'm going to go and upload a sample data, and it's now looked within my data and it's found some data for me. So it's found an employee ID, it's found a column name called phone. And if we have a look, this is actually the one. So it's suggesting some patterns for me already, right? So it's saying if I'm looking for employee ID, I can actually just grab it there. There's the pattern, and it suggests that for me. So I can now just select the one I want. And it now says, if the column's name is employee ID and this data pattern matches, then I am going to go and apply that classification rule, right? So I can go tweak that here if I want. I can also change this match threshold. Now remember I said the sample rate was important about the top 28 or 128 rows in a database. What it's doing is it's looking at that 128 rows in the database and saying, how many of those 128 need to match before I apply this classification? And the default is 60%. I could say all of them need to be that before it matches, or I can drop it down to 10%. So we recommend start at 60%, and if you're starting to get false positives or false negatives, then try and adjust this threshold a little bit. So there you can see it's a little bit more of a description. The suggested value is 60%, and you can change that. So I can now go and hit test classification rule. I'm going to go give it the same data file, and hopefully it should go and say, okay, if I was scanning this, I would go along and that column would get that classification applied to it for me. And that's exactly what we expect, right? If you go and test that and this doesn't come up, then there is something wrong with your rule that you've set. But in this particular case, everybody's happy. I can now go and create this classification rule. So now I've got a classification rule that tells it to apply a classification. And then the last thing I need to do is in our scan, when you set up your scan, you tell it what rule set it should use. And you can see there's a bunch of these rule sets over here, right? And these are the default rule sets. So you can see in here, there's a rule set for Azure Storage. This is a system one. It scans all of these kinds of files. It applies all of these system classifications. So you can see here, it's going to go and apply all 208, or attempt to apply all 208 of these classifications, right? What I want to do here is I want to now go and apply my custom rule set. So custom rule set for Contoso, and we want we wanted to include employee ID. You can call it whatever you want. In the scan rule set, I can say, look, I'm also only interested in particular kinds of files. So if I only want JSON files, for instance, so I just deselect everything else and I just leave JSON files and I say continue. Now I can say, okay, in this rule set, what do I want you to apply? And I know this data file of mine is never going to have any financial information in it. It's never going to have any government information in it. It may have things like personal details. So I'm going to leave personal stuff. I know I probably don't have Japanese customers, so I can go and tweak these things and I can turn on and turn off particular kinds of data. And this will help reduce some of the noise that you may get when you have false positives and you find it classifying US phone numbers when it's not a US phone number and it's something else, right? So you can go and tweak that if you like. Like I know it's never going to have IP addresses in it, right? But the important part here is I want to tell it to include this new rule that I've created. So go and scan all JSON files and include these system rules, but include these custom rules. I can go along and I can actually even tell it here, there's a particular pattern if I want to exclude some kinds of files. But for now, I'm just going to say create, and there it is. And now when you go and create your scan, instead of picking one of the system rule sets, you go along and you pick your custom rule set, and now your custom rule and your classification will be applied if there is a match. So I hope that covers everything that you need to know about system classifications and custom classifications. Back to Amber to talk about network architecture.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, so let's see. The next topic will be network architecture for secure access. So as we know, for the Purview, so Azure has a private link, a private endpoint to make sure the user access is more secure, not public access. So aligned with the Azure functionality, so Purview also has the same capability. So let's take a look at the current, so where we could check the Purview, the private access. So this is this is my one of the Purview account. So under the networking, in the networking setting, under the settings, so we can see there's the ingestion private endpoint and also the private endpoint connection, also the firewall. Firewall, we can set the firewall as allow public access or deny the public access. So let's go to see how we should design the secure network access. Okay, so this is the architecture for the network access. If we have the on-premise data, that is the ICP, that is on-premise, the Oracle SQL Server. So we want to scan the Teradata. We want to use the Purview to scan. So the first one would be how we can let Purview to access your enterprise network. So we can create a private, we can create the subhost IR that can link with the Purview account. And between Azure network, so we know the subhost IR, that is basically VM on your subscription. And in the VM, so that could under specific VNet virtual network. And that Azure virtual network could connect with your on-premise enterprise network. So we can use the IPsec VPN, or we can use the Express route, that is the least line. So when we have the two connection, connect Azure network and also your on-premise enterprise network, so we can create a private link for Purview account. So Purview has a few private endpoints using the private links. For Purview account, so we know Purview uses a separate data governance portal, and Purview has a Purview account itself. And the Purview also has some managed resource. From your current subscription, you can see the managed resource. This is visible managed by Purview. So, and also your data source. So we can create a few private endpoints for the Purview. So this is architecture as a reference how we build the network topology. So some user maybe see, I don't want to maintain VM. I don't want to maintain subhost IR. So that is additional cost, also additional measurement. So there is another feature, we call it the managed VNet. So managed VNet. So in the managed VNet network architecture, so the managed VNet, managed IR, that is hosted in Purview managed VNet network. From this architecture, we do not need to create a subhost IR on VM. We just create a managed the VNet. It will automatically maintain managed IR behind the scene. You won't see it on your subscription. So this is pretty nice, but this also has some the current availability. So we need to be aware. So currently, managed VNet only available in the 6 regions. For the US, we have the East US 2. And this is all the available current region. And meanwhile, so the Purview managed VNet support some data sources. That is basically all the Azure platform as a service. So from here, we can see when we use the managed VNet, so we do not need the build connection with on-premise. So since the scope of the current capability, that is for the Azure Platform as Service. But if you want to scan Azure Platform as Service, that is in the current supported source. So you can just use the managed VNet. That's more easy, more straightforward. All right. So let's see what is how we going to create a private endpoint. Okay. So let me bring one of my Purview account. This is a managed VNet account. So this Purview managed VNet Purview account, I have so if you choose one of the region in the current 6 regions, so you will see there's a managed private endpoints tab. So if that is a Purview account not in that region, you won't see this tab. So for the managed private endpoints, so we can see there's 4 private endpoints that's being created. So this we do not need manually create one by one. When you provision manage the IR, so it will automatically create those private endpoints. See my manage the IR. This is my integration runtime. So if we go here, we find so this is my managed IR. So we can see the type is the managed virtual network. So my integrated runtime, this is a managed integrated runtime. That is the type is managed virtual network. So when I create this managed, so if we go to the creation process, so it will let you choose the VNet configuration. So this will give us the chance to create a managed VNet, managed IR. So we can see this is the Azure IR tab. This will be managed VNet. Okay, I want to go to the create. So just create, click create button. So I want to go to the creation process. This will take some time to create the private endpoints. So let's back to here. When we create a managed IR, managed VNet, so it will automatically create a private endpoints for Purview managed resource, Purview account, manage the blob storage. So I can go to create if I want to scan Azure SQL DB, so I can create a private endpoints Azure SQL DB. So this is the list current available supported data source. So Azure SQL database in the list. All right. So this is the private endpoint network architecture for private endpoint, also managed VNet. So I will hand over to you, Ryan, for the next topic, private pricing model.
Right. Thank you, Amber. Let me check. No, I'm not on mute this time. All right, cool. So people often ask, well, how is Purview priced, and what am I going to pay for Purview, and what are the components? So let's take a quick look at how Purview is being priced. The great resource to start with is our pricing page, and I've posted the link in the chat window, so you can have a look at the pricing page. But effectively, Purview is priced on 3 components. Well, it's priced mostly on the data map and then some other components. The data map particularly is priced on 3 types of activities, right? It's priced on population, enrichment, and consumption, right? Population is really about getting hold of, or actually doing the scanning, getting the metadata, sometimes extracting lineage, classifications on your metadata, inspecting the content to know whether we should classify it or not. That is your data map, right? Data enrichment, that's really like if you're starting to use resource sets in your data map, the use of resource sets that is charged for. And then in your data map consumption, when you're starting to do things like serving up results or building up the lineage graph. Note that it also applies, consumption pricing applies to the use of the Atlas API. So if you're doing some extension of Purview behind the scenes, and you're calling the Atlas API for search results, or you're publishing information into Purview using the Atlas APIs, that those are charged at a consumption rate. So here's an example scenario which you can read through. One thing I want to call out is this elasticity window, right? So your data map is configured to elastically scale within a elasticity window. Data map pricing is always on, right? And by default, it's at one capacity unit, and these are in your currency, and the currency is set here as United States dollars. So your data map pricing, or your data map, is always on. So it's always there, and it's always running. And at a minimum, it's one capacity unit at that amount per hour by so many hours in a month for 10 gigabyte of metadata storage and so many operations per second. Now that's an elasticity kind of scale, and it's charged on, like I said, this elasticity window. If you jump in here to that link, this will talk about the quotas for resources within Purview, and somewhere in here you will see the data map throughput, how much it can kind of scale from a minimum and a maximum. And if you want to change that, for instance, you have a really big data map and you want more capacity units or more operations per second, what you'll need to do is request a quota increase. So you can go through these steps over here, request a quota increase, and then your data map will actually be able to scale elastically even more than it currently does. Notice that this is always on. So yes, that means even if you create a Purview account and you don't do very much with it, you are going, there is a minimum cost of that one capacity unit for the month, right? Scanning, so once I've registered my data source and I actually run my scans, that scan is a compute resource that we deploy, and that scan actually then goes and has a cost associated to it. So that's pay as you go. So the more scans you do, the more you'll pay. The longer your scans run, the more you'll pay. So that's why some of the ideas there, when you're doing the scan, and I chose only scan particular kinds of files and only scan particular kinds of system classifications, those things there help my scan to run a little bit shorter, right? Don't always do full scans, do incremental scans if you're adding to it on like a daily basis or an hourly basis. Those things there will help keep this cost down. And so here is some more examples over here around data map population. You can also go and have a look at your data enrichment. These are where you can start getting some of that information. And elastic data map, this is where I was talking about the capacity unit and how it scales in a window. Purview also has a couple of applications that are built on top of it. One is that's built on top of like the data map, and one is the data catalog. So here are the pricing details for data catalog. Currently, it's all free. It's included in the data map. This one may change at some point once it comes out of preview. If you go and have a look at data estate insights, this is another one where insights, if you look in the Purview portal over here, your data estate insights over there is where you can come in and get your data estate insights. Now you can see in my particular account, I've disabled data estate insights, right? It's enabled by default, and every time it kind of runs, there is a billing cost associated with it. So I have turned mine off on my particular account because I'm not using insights in my test account. Data policy is another part of Azure, and that we haven't covered because it's a preview. But here's data policy. That has some pricing implications. Currently, it's free in preview, but this may change when data policy comes into GA. And same with data sharing. If you come into Purview and you go to data share, over there, it's currently free in preview. So this is where you can find all your information around pricing. Another really good resource, other than our pricing page, and I'm going to paste that into this window as well, is the overview of Purview pricing, which is what I've just walked through, factors impacting the pricing, your indirect costs. So make sure you have a read through these things and understand that. Very, very useful article. And then something else that I like to point people to is a very good blog post by one of our Purview MVPs that walks through an example of how to look at an example of Azure Purview pricing. So he'll break it down. He shows you how to get to the various components and shows you that your Purview data map is currently costing him €18.55. The scanning is costing this much. The classification is costing that much. And he'll walk you through a really good example over here. So have a look at that. That's the pricing information. I hope that answers your questions around pricing. And for now, back over to Amber to wrap it up.
Thank you, Ryan. So let's wrap up our today's session. So today we go through using the Purview setup, the scan, and also the classification. Purview has the system building classification, 208 system building classification. Ryan goes through the system building classification. If you want to set up like your custom classification, so we also can use the regex, so regular expression to set up the custom classification. And the permission management. So Purview provide more granularity permission management collection, the mean, and also the data reader permission, or you want to modify, so all set up the scan. That is also the mean permission. So this is all granularity based on the user, the persona, based on the user, the use case. So permission management, as well as the collection design. When we design the collection, so think about the permission management, who want to use, also how you want to manage your access in the Purview catalog. So Purview support more than 40 data source. So and also there's the format, the key CSV. So we have the whole list of the data format. Purview can set up the scan. And so the lineage, so the processing lineage for the ADF account, for Synapse account, the pipeline, and also the Power BI, and also the data share, the legacy data share snapshot. So besides the processing system, so the lineage also can support storage system, bring relationship between table, view, also function, store procedure. So last is the Power BI reporting lineage. That is also pretty powerful, the lineage. If you have use the Power BI, set up the Power BI scan, and you can get the lineage for the Power BI data set to reports. So network, if you want to set up the secure network access, so use the managed VNet or use self-host IR to set up the private endpoints to make sure the access that is secure in your enterprise network. So pricing, that's also critical when you set up the Purview, so the pricing. So Ryan already goes through the pricing model. So this is our today's session. And so to practice today's session, we have the QR code. So please scan the QR code. You will get all the material we paste in today's session. All the today's material we already published in the Microsoft Purview Data Governance Collection hosted in the Microsoft Learn. So just use this QR code. And don't miss our next session. That is a SQL migration session. So the QR code for register the session and also the material in the QR code. All right. Thank you very much for joining today's session.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.